First contact and the warning, the diplomatic mission. Begins the human starship. Terra's voice drifted through the void at the edge of Cretharian space, its sleek hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Ambassador Alina Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the massive alien space station grow larger on the main viewer. After decades of monitoring galactic communications from the shadows, humanity had finally decided to announce their presence to the galaxy's dominant empire. Alina adjusted her diplomatic uniform and reviewed her mission parameters one final time. Earth's leadership had been clear about their objectives. Offer peaceful trade and cooperation, demonstrate human technological capabilities, and establish formal diplomatic relations with the Cretharian Empire. What they hadn't told the Cretharians was how long humanity had been watching and learning from their transmissions. Captain Marcus Webb approached the ambassador with a concerned expression. His 20 years of service in Earth's deep space fleet had taught him to recognize potential threats, and everything about this situation felt dangerous. The Cretharian Empire controlled over 1,500 star systems and had a reputation for crushing any species that dared to challenge their authority. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the Cretharian border station, Webb reported. They're demanding we power down our weapons and prepare for boarding inspection. Alina smiled calmly and activated the ship's communication array. She had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, learning Cretharian language and customs. The message she was about to deliver would either open a new chapter in human history or start a war that would determine the fate of Earth itself. The Cretharian Response Supreme Commander Vextar materialized on the main viewer, his reptilian features twisted into an expression of barely contained contempt. The Cretharian leader wore the ornate armor of his rank, and his yellow eyes studied the human bridge with obvious disdain. Behind him, dozens of alien officers worked at stations, designed for beings twice the size of humans. Primitive creatures, Vextar hissed in heavily accented English. You dare enter Cretharian space without permission? Your pathetic vessel will be seized and your crew interrogated. Perhaps some of you will survive long enough to tell your species about the price of defying the Empire. Alina stepped forward, keeping her hands visible and her voice steady. Diplomatic protocol required her to remain calm even in the face of obvious hostility. She had studied recordings of Cretharian first contact scenarios with other species, and the pattern was always the same: intimidation, subjugation, and eventual absorption into their empire as slave labor. Supreme Commander Vextar, I am Ambassador Alina Vasquez of the Terran Federation. We have come here in peace to establish diplomatic relations between our peoples. Earth offers advanced technology and resources in exchange for peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. The Cretharian commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made several bridge officers wince. In his 300 years of service, Vextar had conquered 47 different species. These humans would be no different from the others who had tried to bargain for their freedom before accepting the inevitable reality of Cretharian dominance. Technology, Vextar snarled. What could your backward species possibly offer the mighty Cretharian Empire? Your ship is barely 1/10 the size of our smallest patrol vessel. Your entire civilization controls a single star system while we rule 1,500 worlds. Alina activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. The projection revealed massive orbital installations around every planet, asteroid mining operations that stretched across the entire asteroid belt, and industrial complexes that dwarfed anything the Cretharians had previously encountered. Commander Vextar, we have been monitoring galactic communications for over 50 years. We know the Empire values strength above all else. What you see here represents only a fraction of human industrial capacity. We prefer peaceful cooperation, but we are not defenseless. The warning delivered, Captain Webb moved to stand beside the ambassador, his hand resting casually near the emergency alert controls. The ship's sensors had detected over 300 Cretharian vessels surrounding their position, but he showed no sign of concern. Earth's intelligence services had provided detailed information about Cretharian military tactics and ship capabilities. Ambassador Vasquez speaks the truth, Webb said in a voice that carried the authority of someone who had commanded warships in hostile territory. Humanity seeks only peaceful relations with the Cretharian Empire. However, we feel it necessary to warn you that any act of aggression against our vessel or our people would be extremely unwise. Vexter studied the humans with growing irritation. Every species he had encountered followed predictable patterns when faced with Cretharian military superiority. First came desperate attempts at negotiation, then offers of tribute and submission, finally acceptance of their new status as subjects of the Empire. These humans showed none of the proper fear or respect. You warn us, the Supreme Commander roared. Your entire species controls one insignificant system, while the Empire spans a quarter of the galaxy. Our fleet consists of millions of warships, while your primitive vessels number in the hundreds. What possible threat could you represent to the might of the Cretharian Empire? Alina activated her personal recording device and spoke directly into the camera. Her words would be transmitted back to Earth and preserved in the archives of human history, regardless of what happened next. Let the record show that on this date, humanity offered peaceful cooperation to the Cretharian Empire. We demonstrated our industrial capabilities, requested formal diplomatic relations, and warned that aggression would have consequences. The choice of how to proceed belongs entirely to the Empire. She turned off the recording device and looked directly at Vex. The next few minutes would determine whether humanity would gain powerful allies among the stars, or face enemies that controlled resources beyond imagination. The fatal decision Supreme Commander Vextar had heard enough insolence from these primitive humans. Their attitude of casual confidence in the face of overwhelming Cretharian superiority offended his sense of natural order. Perhaps destroying their diplomatic vessel would teach the rest of their species the lesson they needed to learn about challenging the Empire. You dare threaten the Cretharian Empire with your single, pathetic ship? Vexter snarled as he turned to his weapons officer. I will demonstrate what happens to species that show insufficient respect for their betters. Target their main hull and fire. Leave enough debris for their people to understand the consequences of defiance. The massive particle cannons of the Cretharian border station began charging with energy that could vaporize a small asteroid. Alina quickly activated the ship's emergency beacon, transmitting everything they had learned directly back to Earth. The quantum communication array would ensure that human leadership received complete tactical data on Cretharian fleet positions, ship designs, and weapon capabilities. Message sent, Captain, reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. Earth Command will receive full intelligence data on Cretharian military assets within the hour. Captain Webb nodded and activated the ship's final transmission protocols. His message would reach every human colony and military installation throughout their territory, carrying authorization codes that would trigger responses the Cretharians couldn't possibly imagine. This is Captain Marcus Webb reporting mission. Failure. The Cretharian Empire has refused peaceful contact and chosen war. All vessels are hereby authorized to implement Protocol 7. Repeat, implement Protocol 7 immediately. The point of no return. The Critherian weapons fired with devastating power, turning the Terror's voice into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and twisted metal. Supreme Commander Vexter watched with satisfaction as the last traces of the human vessel disappeared from his sensors. He had taught these primitive humans their first lesson about the price of challenging Critherian authority. However, as the alien fleet began making preparations to invade human space, none of them noticed the small quantum beacon that had ejected from the diplomatic ship seconds before its destruction. The device continued transmitting detailed intelligence data across interstellar distances, carrying information that would prove far more dangerous to the Empire than any conventional weapon. Vextar settled back in his command chair and began planning what he expected to be a quick conquest of the human home system. His scouts reported that Earth's defenses consisted of fewer than 800 vessels, most of them converted civilian craft with minimal military capability. The upcoming campaign would provide excellent training for his younger officers while adding another star system to the Empire's already vast domain. Asterisk. What the Supreme Commander didn't know was that in destroying the Terror's voice, he had just triggered the most carefully planned military response in human history. Earth's leadership had always hoped for peaceful contact with galactic civilization, but they had also prepared for the possibility that such contact might lead to war. For 50 years, human intelligence services had monitored Critherian communications and studied their military doctrine. Every ship design, every tactical manual, and every strategic weakness had been catalogued and analyzed. When humanity finally revealed themselves to the galaxy, they came prepared for any possible response. The quantum beacon continued its transmission. As Critherian forces began mobilizing for what they expected to be an easy conquest, within hours, the Empire would learn that humanity had been far more than passive observers of galactic affairs. They had been preparing for this exact scenario, and their preparations would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. As news of the diplomatic vessel's destruction reached Earth, military commanders across the solar system began implementing protocols that had been decades in the making. The Critherian Empire had made their choice, and now they would discover what humanity looked like when they stopped trying to be peaceful neighbors and started acting like the apex predators they had always been. Asterisk. The Reckoning, the invasion fleet, arrived 6 months after the destruction of humanity's diplomatic vessel. The largest military armada in Critherian history emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Admiral Carthax commanded 100,000 warships from the bridge of his massive flagship, watching with anticipation as the primitive human home system appeared on his tactical displays. The Admiral studied intelligence reports showing human space ahead. Their entire military appeared to consist of converted merchant vessels and outdated patrol ships scattered throughout the solar system. The humans had spent the past 6 months frantically building defensive installations around their inner planets, but such hasty preparations would prove useless against the overwhelming firepower of the Imperial fleet. Supreme Commander Vex stood beside Carthax, eager to witness the completion of humanity's conquest. The destruction of their diplomatic ship had been merely the opening move in what promised to be the Empire's easiest campaign in centuries. These humans would serve as an example to any other species that might consider challenging Critherian authority. Admiral, reported the fleet's intelligence officer. Our forward scouts confirm that human defensive forces number fewer than 1,000 vessels. Most appear to be civilian ships, hastily converted for military use. They have concentrated their forces around the inner planets, leaving the outer system largely undefended. Carthax nodded with satisfaction. The tactical situation was exactly what Cretharian military doctrine predicted when facing a technologically inferior opponent. The humans were following standard defensive patterns that the Empire had encountered and defeated countless times before. What the Cretharian commanders didn't realize was that every aspect of their approach had been carefully monitored and analyzed by sensors they couldn't detect. Hidden throughout the solar system, human observation posts tracked the massive alien fleet while transmitting tactical data to Earth's military headquarters. Human strategy revealed on the bridge of the human flagship Defiance. Admiral Chen Rodriguez watched the approaching Cretharian armada with calm confidence. Her fleet of 750 vessels waited in formation around Luna, their weapons powered down and shields at minimum strength. 2 enemy sensors, they appeared to be making a desperate last stand with inferior equipment and inadequate numbers. The reality was far different. Every human ship had been built using technologies that the Cretharians had never encountered. Their hulls incorporated metamaterials that could absorb and redirect energy weapons, while their power systems utilized controlled fusion reactions that produced outputs far exceeding anything in the Imperial arsenal. Admiral, reported Captain David Kim from his position aboard the cruiser New Horizon, enemy fleet is deploying in standard Imperial formation. They're following Tactical Manual 77 Alpha, exactly as intelligence predicted. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Human analysts had spent decades studying captured Cretharian tactical doctrine, identifying patterns and weaknesses that could be exploited. The Empire's greatest strength, their rigid adherence to proven strategies, had become a vulnerability that humanity was prepared to exploit. All vessels maintain current positions, the Admiral ordered. Let them come to us. Tactical, activate the deep system arrays on my command. Communications, prepare to broadcast our final warning on all frequencies. Throughout the solar system, automated defense platforms that had remained hidden for months began powering up their weapons systems. Asteroid mining stations revealed their true nature as heavily armed fortress complexes. Even the seemingly civilian traffic moving between planets turned out to be military vessels in disguise. The Trapped Springs fleet. Admiral Carthax gave the order for his first assault wave to attack the human defensive line. 10,000 Cretharian warships surged forward, their weapons charging as they closed the distance to what appeared to be a desperate human last stand. The Admiral expected the battle to last less than an hour before Earth's pathetic defenses collapsed entirely. The human fleet opened fire first, their weapons reaching across impossible distances with devastating accuracy. Admiral Rodriguez had waited until the Cretharian ships were committed to their attack vector before revealing humanity's true capabilities. All vessels, implement Battle Plan Omega, she ordered. Show them what real firepower looks like. Captain Kim's cruiser unleashed a barrage that should have been impossible for such a small vessel. Energy beams powered by controlled antimatter reactions struck 12 Cretharian dreadnoughts in rapid succession, each shot punching through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The alien ships didn't just explode, they disintegrated, as human weapons unmade their molecular structure. Across the battlefield, the same scenario played out as human vessels demonstrated technological superiority that defied everything the Cretharians thought they knew about warfare. Ship after ship in the Imperial assault wave simply ceased to exist under the devastating barrage of human weapons. Fleet Admiral Carthax stared at his tactical display in growing horror, as nearly 8,000 of his finest warships were destroyed in less than 10 minutes. The humans had just accomplished something that military theory claimed was impossible. Smaller force had not only survived an overwhelming attack, but had won decisively. Impossible, whispered Supreme Commander Vexstar as he watched his ships die around him. Their weapons fire faster, hit harder, and reach farther than anything in our databases. How could these primitives develop such advanced technology? The counterattack begins as the second Critherian assault wave prepared to attack. Sensors throughout the solar system detected massive hyperspace signatures approaching from every direction. Admiral Rodriguez smiled as she watched her carefully. Laid traps spring shut around the Imperial fleet. Phase 2 is now active, she announced to her commanders. All reserve fleets, execute emergence, pattern Delta. The human ships that intelligence reports claimed were scattered and hiding throughout the outer system suddenly materialized around the Critherian fleet in perfect formation. Admiral Sarah Mitchell emerged from hyperspace behind Jupiter with 400 ships from the outer colonies. Captain Robert Chen brought 300 vessels from the asteroid belt installations. Commander Lisa Park arrived with the entire Home Guard fleet, adding another 600 ships to the human force in less than 15 minutes. The tactical situation had completely reversed. What the Critherians had thought was a decisive numerical advantage suddenly became a trap, with human forces surrounding and outnumbering the Imperial fleet in local space. Admiral, reported the tactical officer with barely controlled excitement. Total human fleet strength now reads 2,800 vessels. The Critherian force is completely surrounded and cut off from retreat routes. Every withdrawal of human ships from outlying positions had been carefully choreographed to bring maximum firepower to bear at this exact moment and location. The Empire's intelligence services had been fed false information about human capabilities, while the real strength of Earth's military remained hidden until the perfect moment to reveal it. Technological superiority demonstrated Supreme Commander Vexstar finally understood the full scope of human deception as he watched their true fleet capabilities unfold around his trapped forces. These weren't primitive beings who had stumbled onto a few advanced technologies. They were master strategists who had been studying and preparing for this confrontation for decades. All ships break formation and retreat immediately, he ordered. Desperately, we must escape before they complete their encirclement. It was already too late. Human fighter squadrons launched from hidden carriers and swept through the Critherian formation, like schools of deadly predators. Each human pilot demonstrated reflexes and tactical awareness that allowed them to outfight multiple enemy craft simultaneously, while their fighters themselves proved to be technological marvels that made Imperial designs look primitive. Admiral Rodriguez revealed the true extent of human technological advancement as her ships unleashed weapons that redefined the very concept of space warfare. Antimatter cannons produced energy outputs that were triple anything Critherian fusion technology could achieve, while defensive systems absorbed and redirected enemy fire with casual efficiency. All vessels activate full power output, she commanded. Demonstrate to the galaxy what happens when humanity stops holding back. The space around the human fleet blazed with energies that sensors across both fleets registered as impossible. Controlled antimatter reactions powered weapon systems that could unmake matter at the atomic level, while shield generators created protective barriers that were literally impenetrable to conventional weapons. Captain Kim targeted a Critherian super dreadnought that was 50 times larger than his cruiser and fired a single shot from his main antimatter cannon. The massive alien vessel didn't just explode, began breaking apart at the molecular level as the weapon dissolved the atomic bonds holding its hull together. Within seconds, a ship that had taken decades to build became expanding clouds of component particles. The reckoning complete, the battle continued for 18 hours as human forces systematically dismantled the largest military fleet in galactic history. Admiral Rodriguez had given strict orders to minimize casualties while demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority. The goal was not genocide, but education, showing the galaxy that humanity would not be conquered or intimidated. As the surviving Cretharian ships finally managed to break free and flee toward their home territory, they carried with them recordings and censored data that would reshape galactic politics forever. The empire that had dominated known space for 3,000 years had been decisively defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Fleet Admiral Carthax sat in his damaged command chair, staring at casualty reports that seemed impossible to believe. Over 70,000 Cretharian vessels had been destroyed or disabled, while human losses totaled fewer than 30 ships. The mathematical impossibility of such results would haunt Imperial strategic planning for generations to come. Admiral, whispered his communications officer, were receiving a transmission from the human flagship. They're requesting parley. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the main viewer, her expression calm but implacable. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance hummed with quiet efficiency as human officers monitored the retreat of the shattered Imperial fleet. Fleet Admiral Carthax, Supreme Commander Vextar, she said formally. The Terran Federation offers you safe passage back to Cretharian space. We have no desire to pursue your retreating forces or invade your territory. However, we want to make something perfectly clear to your empire and the galaxy as a whole. She paused as the tactical display behind her showed the complete disposition of human forces throughout the solar system. Hidden installations, disguised warships, and defensive platforms that numbered in the tens of thousands, all of it revealed for the first time. Humanity sought peaceful cooperation and offered it freely. You chose war instead. We have demonstrated that Earth and her children are not victims waiting to be conquered. We are apex predators who prefer to be peaceful neighbors, but we are fully capable of defending ourselves and our interests. The Admiral's voice carried across space to listening posts throughout the galaxy, where dozens of species monitored the transmission with growing amazement. The balance of power in known space had just shifted dramatically, and every civilization would need to recalculate their relationships with both the Cretharian Empire and the newly revealed Human Federation. Return to your space, tend to your wounded, and remember this lesson, Rodriguez concluded. Humanity stands ready to engage in peaceful trade and cooperation with any species that approaches us with respect. But never again make the mistake of assuming that our preference for peace indicates weakness. We gave you fair warning, and you chose not to listen. As the shattered remnants of the Cretharian invasion fleet limped away from Earth's solar system, they carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced their presence with overwhelming force, but they had also demonstrated restraint and honor in victory. The choice of what kind of relationship to build with Earth's children now belonged to every species in known space. The age of unchallenged Cretharian dominance was over, and the age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun. Asterisk.